First of all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Do you have anything interesting that you want to tell us about yourself in relation to conventions and all that?
Just that for the most part, I've only been in the guest relations department, and it's not as glamorous as everyone seems to think it is. People are like, "Oh, wow, you get to meet all the guests and you get to go behind the scenes." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't sleep." And a lot of times if you're in guest relations, you have to be there before the convention starts because the guests arrive early, and you have to be there after the convention ends because the guests usually fly out the next day. So, just if you're going to volunteer, just keep that in mind. It's not all sparkles and fun. So,
So it's definitely not as glamorous as it seems, right? Because a lot of people
no.
who are involved around the situation, right, like myself, we've actually never been to a single convention. So hearing from
Oh,
people
wow.
like you, gives us insight on what it's like to be around voice actors and all that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people don't realize that you pay for everything out of pocket. The only thing that I get for free most of the time, or I used to, I don't do conventions here in Japan, but your badge and sometimes food. And I have been extremely lucky in the past where some convention owners have felt that it was worth it to pay for a plane ticket for me to fly out to their event, or they have paid for a hotel room for me. But that is an exception. It's not the rule. So you're paying for your own food, your own hotel room, and especially if you're in some of the more time intensive departments, you give up, like, you don't get to convention, you don't get to go out and hang out, and you don't have downtime. You spend all of your time doing the work for the convention. So it's not as awesome as people think it is.
All right. So what was your reaction to being mentioned in the affidavit?
I have to say that my knee jerk reaction when someone emailed me the document was, that snake. Um, because it's not as though Faisal couldn't have picked up the phone, so to speak, and called me. We were still personally connected on Facebook. He would have, even barring that, I'm sure that they would have still had access to my email, even my Skype ID from when I used to have conversations with the new head of guest relations. uh, Everything that he wrote in that affidavit could have just been checked with a quick message. And he intentionally, I can only imagine, didn't do that because he knew what I would say. So it's just, it wasn't unsurprising from what I know from his character.
Interesting. So, it was very interesting that he didn't try to consult you before speaking for you in a legal document. I'm sure you thought so yourself, right?
Right.
So, isn't it a little strange, and like you just insinuated, seems like it's part of his character according to you? Isn't it strange that he didn't consult you and spoke for you? It seems like he's trying to push a certain narrative, correct? Using you.
Yes, I 100% believe, my own personal opinion, that he was just stirring the pot with that, based on what I know of him and my interactions I've had with him in the past. That it seems intentional and calculated.
So after you were mentioned in the affidavit, you took to Twitter and wrote a thread clarifying some things and denying some things that he said on your behalf, right? So
That's correct.
were you afraid that you were going to get any backlash from Kick Vic because of that?
I I'm not concerned about people on the internet as far as that part goes. I have a little bit of a unique situation that I'm on the other side of the world. I'm no longer involved in the convention scene. So there was nothing that they could do that I was concerned about. I mean, the block button exists, reporting formats exist. So if anyone was going to decide to be exceedingly abusive or something like that, there are ways to deal with it. And also, Twitter, I don't know if most people noticed that my Twitter wasn't active. I'd had the Twitter for some time, but it wasn't active at all. So if I had to burn my Twitter down because people were just being insane, it wasn't going to be like, oh gosh, no, great loss, my Twitter, I must stop tweeting.
See, that makes me happy. Everything you said makes me so happy because it's a sign of maturity. You know what I mean? And in this
Well, thank
situation,
you.
when a lot of people are very immature, it's refreshing to see a point of view like that.
Yeah, it's
So,
just it goes beyond my understanding how some of the people involved in this have been acting with a person's livelihood at stake. So,
yes, it's very true. So, since you were indirectly involved in the lawsuit and the affidavit, what are your personal thoughts on this whole situation, the lawsuit, all the allegations that have been coming out, all that?
um, I would say that my my opinion on that is that it's pretty ridiculous for 90% of what's been thrown around, and the other 10% I think is hindsight uh, remorse about their own behavior in situations that occurred. I do not for a minute think that Vic has ever made advances to anyone who was underage, legal age of consent. It's just it's preposterous in my opinion. And I know him. I'm not just someone who has worked with him at conventions only, who only talks to him during those times when we're working at events. I mean, I have his phone number. I've talked to him on a number of occasions. We text, we talk on Facebook. I worked on his web series with him. It's just it's just preposterous is the best word I can come up with.
Remember that, everyone. Erica hasn't just spoke to him once at a convention. She's actually worked with him. She actually has his phone number. They've spoken a lot. It's fair to say that you've had a numerous amount of interactions with him, and you can
I have.
make a fair judgment on his character, correct?
That I believe so. I mean, there are people who know him better than me, but for my part, I think that I know him well enough. I know his character well enough that yeah, it's just it's preposterous.
Okay, so one such situation, which is pretty similar to what you just referenced with the whole underage girl thing. I won't go through everything that this movement called Kick Vic has done, because then we'd be here all day. But
Mm.
one such specific situation is there's this lawyer on Twitter named Greg Doucette, I'm not really too sure how to pronounce that. And he has
Mhm.
recently tweeted photos of Vic kissing a girl at a con and claimed that the girl was 16 and claimed that she did not want to be kissed by him at all. It was actually proven by a statement made by the girl that he was lying. She was 18 at the time, and she was very excited to be kissed on the cheek, by the way, by Vic. So what's your thoughts on situations like that?
Context is king. I posted that on one of my other comments on Twitter, but it's just an adult in the real world who is in a real profession should have a good enough understanding of how the world works that if they're going to take something that either they know is out of context or may be out of context or is incendiary in any manner, that they should double check that before they present it to the world as fact. It's people have this bias of authority. They think that because someone is in a job that has a great deal of authority in the real world, that everything they say is going to be the gospel truth, and that's just not how it is. And I think this has been an excellent example of don't believe what you see on the internet. It was easily verifiable that video existed of that young lady at that auction, and every detail of that story was incorrect, which is what was amazing. You could forgive if maybe they had made a mistake on one thing. Oh, okay, well she was 18, not 16, or oh, okay, uh, they made $20, not $420 or whatever the amount was. But the entirety of that statement was false, and it's unfortunately it's a shame on him that he either ignorantly posted that information without trying to verify it, or he worse intentionally did it.
I would have to assume that he intentionally did it because even after he was corrected, all he said was, "Oh, so Vic didn't coerce the girl, he just groomed her. Good to know." Sarcastic statement.
Oh my gosh, people are just obsessed with this he's grooming young girls thing. I just It's just so ridiculous. I've sat behind an autograph table for just hours of my life watching this man interact with hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people. And the only thing I have ever thought is, man, he loves his fans. He's dedicated to them. And I just, I just, oh man, I don't understand where this comes from.
So your perspective is so unique because you know Vic better than 99% of us, right? So what is your overall, I mean, you just said you witnessed him with his fans just having a good time, right? Being positive,
Right.
being kind to fans and all that. So despite everything you've heard and everything that we've seen throughout this whole situation, what is your overall impression of Vic?
I think that overall, Vic is a guy that just he loves his fans. And I'm going to tell this story because he's told it a million times and it's on video somewhere. But in the past, Vic was married and he had not biological children, but that woman had two children. And those were, the only kids he's ever had. And when they divorced, they were basically pulled away from him. And so the people that he interacts with at the convention kind of became like surrogate family for him. Those were his children. I've heard him say in a number of panels, you guys are kind of like the kids I've never had. That's he's so invested in these people, and it's. I'm often just shocked, even before it became common for guests to sell their autograph. I remember before that became the norm in most anime convention circles, at least, that the guest was paid a flat fee by the convention. They showed up and they signed things and they sold merchandise, but you got one or two things signed for free. And he would just be so upset if we had to cut a line, because those people had already stood there and waited for him, and he didn't think it was fair, that he didn't want to disappoint them. Everything he does more or less is for his fans. And it is about making money, but it's not about making money for anything other than his own, continuance of his work and his survival. He loves his fans. There's a video that went around at the beginning where he's out in front of a convention having some words with some protesters. I'm in the background of that event. I watched that happen. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's so shameless that he had people recording it." Well, no, he didn't have people recording it. There were people recording it when it happened. And a lot of the reason they were recording it was in case something actually happened, like the protesters became violent or there was some kind of altercation. But he genuinely was so upset that those people were using his faith to come out here and try to hurt the kids that are his family, basically. So that's that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. So what is your overall message to the community when it comes to this whole situation? You seem like a very mature person. You seem like you are an insider to these types of things, and not only with conventions, but interactions with voice actors. So, what is your overall message to the community on how we should handle situations like this in the future, if that makes sense?
Um, proper channels exist for a reason. I mean, if there had ever been any real law-breaking impropriety that occurred, they should handle it in the real world through the proper channels. This age of the social media witch hunting is just unfortunate to see. And I understand that the social media has allowed some people who otherwise might not have had a voice to speak about things that really did happen that really hurt them. But it's a double-edged sword, in that either real victims can come forward and make statements and they can be dogpiled and into being quiet, or I don't want to say fake victims or false victims, but people who believe that they are victims, who who come forward might not actually be victims in a legal sense, uh, come forward and can cause, as we've seen in this situation, someone to lose their livelihood with zero proof. Zero. I know everybody's just like, ah, well, this with the twins, or that with the hair, or this with a jelly bean, but just you guys are adults. You you should be able to tell. I mean, I'm guessing that most of these people involved are adults. I've met most of them. So you're adults. You should understand. You should have the common sense to understand a situation and to come back 10 years later and be like, "Oh, well, I was uncomfortable because he made a joke when he ate a jelly bean," or it's just it's staggeringly unbelievable. So my message is, guys, just if something really happens to you, don't be quiet. Go to the authorities. But if you're gonna just go on the internet and say that this and that happened, and try to play on the outrage culture that exists right now, you need to leave that stuff at home.
Perfect segue into my next point or my next question was the thing you brought up about evidence, right? A lot of these people are just saying things without evidence. And, in cases like these, sometimes the only thing that people have is their word, correct? So the
Correct.
best thing to do, like you said, is immediately go to the police. Don't wait years, don't wait decades, don't even wait months, don't even wait weeks. Immediately go to the police. And since you're a person who's been at, I'm assuming, loads of conventions, right? You just
Yes.
told a story earlier about Vic being recorded while interacting with some protesters, correct? Would you not
Correct.
agree that pretty much every single action a voice actor does at a convention is not only recorded by the fans, but recorded by, I'm assuming conventions have CCTV cameras, correct?
Um, I wouldn't go so far as that last one. Be considering some of the venues I've been to where conventions have been held, but yeah, I mean, in especially in the last, I would say, I don't know, 7 years or so, where cell phones with high quality cameras have become commonplace in everybody's pocket, you are constantly being recorded. Now, at some events, they might be like, well, we're not allowed to record when we're standing in the line, or we can't record when we go to autograph sessions. Ah, that's true. But nowadays, it is common practice for conventions to record all panels that occur and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, the, I just can't imagine that if for the last 20 years that there have been so many instances of law-breaking impropriety on his part, that there isn't someone who has a text message. They were all on him. Oh, well, he deletes his text messages. Okay, text messages go two ways. If there was anything that he had said to someone, or any conversations he's had that were inappropriate, to these people who he'd been texting or emailing, where are those? Where are the other half of those emails? Data has two sets of trails, the sender and the receiver. Um, where is all of that? It's just, and to the people that say, okay, well, maybe they were afraid to come forward, or they were worried that he was going to ruin, their ability to go to conventions. That's when you have to make a real life choice. If someone does something to you that you consider heinous enough to to try to destroy their career over, you need to decide what's more important. Keeping your ability to go to these events, or reporting a crime that you feel is so severe. That's what I just don't understand. And if something happens to you, no convention you go to is worth continuing to go to if someone has actually done something wrong. And not only for you, but for all the other people that you go to these events with. If you had been around someone and they had done something terrible to you, and you don't report it because you're afraid, not only are you hurting yourself, you're also hurting everyone else that's in that community. There's a danger there. So, even if you're afraid to do it for yourself, think about everyone else. Like, don't not report things that do happen. I don't want to discourage anyone from reporting things that happen.
Of course, especially when it's like you said, a criminal act being done to yourself. And like you said,
Mm,
even if you do have genuine concerns about, oh, I think that Vic will use his power to suppress me in some way, if you're afraid of that, at least do it for the other people, the safety of the other people at the convention, correct? But I'm very
correct.
surprised at that CCTV camera thing. I would have thought conventions had those. Unless you mean some smaller conventions don't have them. I would assume that the bigger ones like Matsuri have them, correct?
It's completely based upon the event space. You know, I have, for example, my best example for most things is going to be Anime Weekend Atlanta because it's the one that I worked at the longest, but or volunteered at the longest. But I, I'm trying to remember, like, have I ever seen the CCTV camera banks? Like, the convention center is massive. In a lot of cases, it's a hotel in a convention center, and hotels don't tend to have CCTVs in every space. Is they certainly don't have them in the meeting rooms, which is where most of the panels and things take place. They may have them in the common thoroughfares, like where you're walking through to go from one place to another, but such as the massive convention halls or things like that, if they have CCTVs, I've cameras, I've never seen them. Although I wasn't in security or public safety as we call it, so I'm not 100% sure, but as far as I recall, I've never heard of an instance where the director of security said, "Oh, well, we checked it on the CCTVs." I've never once heard that.
But would you agree that pretty much every action, especially some of the bigger voice actors like Vic, do at a panel, at a convention line, everything is pretty much always recorded by either the fans or the convention themselves?
Always, always, always. Unless there is a strict no recording policy prior to entering the room, say perhaps they're going to be showing video clips of something that they can't have reproduced. Everything is going to be recorded, and especially nowadays, it's become really popular, kind of like the way Dragon Con does, is to have your own convention TV. So the people who don't want to go to a panel room or who can't get into a panel room because it's full can still watch the panel either streaming live on a platform such as YouTube, or in some cases actually piped straight into the hotel that's attached to the convention's television system. So yeah, everything is recorded in that sense.
Have you had any interactions with any of the defendants in this case?
I
Monica,
have
Jamie, and Ron.
met Miss Rial on 3 separate occasions, but I have never been her handler.
Did you ever once did the thought cross in your mind that she had any sort of disdain or discomfort around Vic?
No, but I don't know that I ever saw them interact together at the events that I was at because maybe we went to a dinner. We all went to a dinner together. It used to be common practice at a lot of conventions for the last day of the convention that all of the voice acting guests, all of the special guests, and a lot of times their handlers all went out to dinner together. But that would have been the only time I think I'd seen the two of them in the same space together. That wasn't like the green room. But no, I've never seen them interact adversely around each other.
Very, very interesting. All right. Do you have any final thoughts on this whole situation? Any last messages that you want to give everyone? Any
Uh,
interesting things that you've seen at conventions? This is your time to just let loose. Go ahead.
I think that speaking from my experience, from the things I've seen, if guests have behaved badly behind the scenes, their handlers are very likely going to be some of the first people that have seen this happen. Um, oh man, I can. I'm just thinking of all of the things that I've seen just firsthand, not including things that people I've worked with have told me that they've encountered. But I mean, the amount of impropriety that goes on behind the scenes at conventions is quite interesting, and it used to be a lot crazier. I would say in the last years or so, things have become a lot more professional because in back in the day, conventions used to be put on by people who love anime for other people who love anime, manga, whatever that medium was, and just wanted to share it. But so the atmosphere was a lot lighter. You didn't have to worry about, 7 years ago, you didn't have to worry about everything you said being filmed or things like that, or people posting it on message boards. But now it has shifted away, especially the larger, medium to larger size conventions. It's shifted away from that family feeling to, they're just money making machines by the people who run them. And a lot of them are not for profit, they are nonprofit, so all of the money that the convention makes goes into the convention. The people who are the CEOs and things like that, they don't get a paycheck or anything. But it's just, it broke my heart when the first time I showed up to a convention and the guest relations staffer told me, yeah, the guests are going to be charging for all their autographs this year. And I just it was so disheartening because it's like, well, now it's really not for the fans anymore. You're shifting the burden of paying for the guest onto the fans, and that's going to make it harder for the teenagers and the young adults who frequent these events, who maybe scrape together their money for the year to come see their favorite guest. Now they're going to stand in line and go, well, I have to pay another $30 to get a signature. No offense, but these guys aren't William Shatner. They're not, Carl Urban. They're voice actors. So it's just it's they're making this gap, I guess, between their fans a little bit. The conventions are causing this gap to happen, but um that's really all I've got on that. But yeah, I mean, if there had just been years, and I've heard stories, I've heard people, you have no idea. I've gone to so many other conventions that I've worked at where people who don't know me will go, you've worked with Vic, that must be terrible. I don't think I have ever once said to a person, oh well, normally I handle Vic at events, and they have not looked at me like I just told them I had to walk through hell both ways to get where I was going. Other voice actors. I've also worked with Scott McNeil, who I also received similar responses. Oh my God, you worked with him. God, that must have been so difficult for you. And I'm just like, where are you guys getting this from? Oh, well, my friend told me about this thing that happened to someone at an event. I've never once I take that back. I have once been told a firsthand story about a guest, but other than that, it's always the gossip mill with guests. People have these horror stories that exist, and it's just 90% of it is just telephoned. It started with, well, he yelled at me one time because something went wrong at a panel, and it snowballs into, he screamed at me because of something I couldn't control, and he stormed out of the panel and the fans were upset. And I'm just like, just guys, don't tell stories that aren't yours. That's my number one thing. Don't tell stories that aren't yours. If it didn't happen to you, don't repeat it.
It's so strange how a lot of people are telling you about people that you have interacted with more than they have. Isn't it a little
It really,
strange?
it's amazing. At first I thought, actually, because the very first convention I ever worked, the person who trained me for guest relations was like, now look, this guy is difficult. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I understand that. But over the years, it just snowballed in from, this guy is difficult to, this man is a terror to work with, to, and it all culminated in the event that I posted on Twitter, where a convention owner flew me to one of his conventions, not to handle Vic, to handle a different guest. And at the staff meeting, one of the staffers just went on this tirade when she found out that I knew Vic, and had worked with him at other events. Like, yeah, you guys got to make sure that you're careful around him because he cusses in front of little kid students. He cusses in front of little kids like a sailor, and he screams at people. And she just went off the deep end. And I'm just kind of sitting there smiling, looking at her like, I, you just, are you sure you're talking about the same person? Because I can guarantee you that I don't think Vic has ever said a cuss word in front of a fan in his whole life. I mean, the guy doesn't even do 18 plus panels like some of the voice actors do. So it's just not on brand for him. But yeah, it is quite interesting to hear people sit down and talk about these people that I know personally, whose phone numbers I have, who have let me stay in their apartments when I've traveled, who've I've interacted with outside of convention scenes, and they're telling me all of these things, and I'm like, none of what you're saying matches the people that I know. So,
It's so interesting hearing your perspective as an outsider because even the YouTubers in this situation, people think we're like insiders in the situation. No, people like you are like the insiders. You have more information than we do. So all we can really do, right, is read these documents that come out every now and then. And reading the
Mhm.
affidavit that Faisal wrote mentioning you, it sounds like you are mortified of Vic. It sounds like you are absolutely terrified of him. So
I'm
thank you
only
so much.
terrified of him if he hasn't had his coffee.
So thank you so much for speaking out against Faisal and against the narrative that basically Twitter is pushing right now that Vic is this monster.
Right. Yeah, if people wanna know what a real monster is, they should have tuned into Rekieta's show night before last. That's a
Oh,
monster.
oh.
That's a monster. A guy who says, "Hey, girl, your hair looks so great," and fluffs it. That's not a monster.
All right, so thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I know Erica's probably too nice to plug her stuff, so I will plug her Twitter in the description. Be sure to go follow her on Twitter. And
Oh
you
god, please, I don't know what to do. That's been so overwhelming. People are just following me on Twitter and talking to me, and I don't know what to do. It's like
guys
I'm
get her more followers. We'll get her more followers. All right, if you guys have any questions for Erica in the comments, please let me know in the comments, and maybe if she has some time, she'll answer a few of them. But yeah, that's pretty
Yeah, of
much it.
course.
Once again, thank you so much for joining me,
You're
and
very welcome.
see you guys later.
Bye-bye.